I have had the misfortune of coming across a few scary guys in my life. My friends will say I'm a weirdo magnet, so I'm pretty wary and clued up now that I'm a bit older. But when I was a teenager, I suppose you could say I was very naive. It was a beautiful town in an affluent part of the country, but I struggled to find a job and became very frustrated as my mom needed a bit of help with money. Over the course of about 3 months, we became fairly friendly with a middle-aged guy who owned a takeaway shop in town. I will call him Phil. If he saw us doing some shopping, he would come and chat and ask how the family was, and he genuinely seemed like a decent, caring bloke. So when he said he might have a job for me in his shop with a small flat upstairs I could rent for next to nothing, I thought, okay, great, maybe things are looking up. Phil got our address and told me and Mom he would pop by early evening when he had finished and take me in the car to go and see the flat. I got myself looking fairly casual but presentable, and I'm feeling excited and confident, thinking, wow, a job and a flat. Killed 2 birds with 1 stone here. I just need to show him I'm sophisticated and would make a great employee. Around 8 p.m., he knocks on the front door and Mom answers. He tells her we will probably only be about half an hour, and he will have me back safe and sound in no time. Now, I didn't take my phone with me as I had no credit to call out and didn't think I would be needing it for a quick trip up the road and back. In hindsight, a pretty stupid thing to do. Maybe if I had my phone on me, it would have deterred him from what he was about to do. It's already dark out, as it's March. I get into his car, and we start driving, and he is chatting away, asking how I am and telling me what the flat is like. 30 seconds after, I realize he is taking me in the completely opposite direction, and I can tell that we are driving away from the populated town and into an area where trees swamp both sides of the road. My brain is now working overtime, thinking, where the fuck is this guy taking me? And I just about managed to keep my composure, and I asked him outright, where are we going? Town's back the other way. I just thought I would take you on a little tour. It's beautiful here, with many forests and peaceful places I would love to show you, he tells me in his normal cheery tone. I wasn't capable of saying anything at that moment because the logical and the reasoning sides of my brain were in a full-blown war. I'm trying to keep calm, thinking, okay, he seems fairly normal. Why would he want to show me around? It is a stunning area full of natural beauty. He is probably proud to show me where he lives. The logical side, however, disagreed, and a wave of panic comes over me, and a little voice enters my head and shouts, "Fuck no, are you stupid?" So I just sit there in silence, taking in the scenery, which is becoming more sinister by the second, because at that moment in time, I didn't know what to think. All I know is every cell in my body is screaming at me to find a way out of this situation. I started looking for signposts, houses, any distinctive landmarks, ditches, huge trees, or anything that would be able to use to recognize my way back if I had to bolt from his car. Phil can obviously sense I'm nervous, so he is just talking away at me about what the job is like and how his staff are friendly. And before I know it, he has slowed down to a crawl, and he has turned down a little mud rut road with a dense tree line on one side and pitch-black open fields on the other. My stomach literally drops, and my body contemplates power vomiting all over his car, because the reality of what is about to potentially happen hits me like a freight train. I'm thinking to myself, if I jump out here, I have to be able to run over muddy fields into literally nowhere. But my imagination starts rather helpfully flashing by images of him grabbing me before I get a chance to get out the door. So, I just sit there, buckled in the passenger seat, not saying a word. I'm just thinking to myself, if he attacks me, don't make a sound. Don't give him the satisfaction of showing him I'm scared. My brain was about as useful as a chocolate teapot, and I was starting to get angry with myself for not doing something. But I was terrified. We come out at the top of this little dirt road, and there is a tiny little car park surrounded by woodland with one car parked in it. It was clear there were people in there having sex, and as he pulls near the car, I realize he has brought me to a local dogging spot. He turns to me and puts his hand on my knee. We should do what they are doing, with a deadly serious expression on his face. I make this bizarre, half-nervous laugh, half-garbled, high-pitched whine, and I try to laugh off the suggestion to show I'm not into it, and I'm super uncomfortable right now. The alarmed expression on his face at my gurgled cackle, which sounds like I've swallowed a potato whole, clearly freaks him out, and I'm mentally congratulating myself for my socially awkward and grossly unsexy reaction. It will be fun. No one will see us, he persists. No, I don't want to. Plus, I'm kind of seeing someone right now, I lie. But he sits there just smiling at me like a Cheshire cat, like I'm going to miraculously change my mind at the sight of his weird face. Mom will be expecting me home now, I tell him after an insanely uncomfortable 30 seconds more of this, as I try my damn hardest not to make eye contact. I'm sure she won't mind you being out a bit longer with me. You can trust me. You know, he tells me with a straight face as we sit next to the sex wagon parked next to us. I sharply pull my leg away from his grip and tell him again. Mom is waiting for me. She will start panicking if I'm not home in the next few minutes. Take me home. I look him straight in the face, and he knows that I'm not messing around. Okay, that's fine. I'll take you back now, he says without another word. He drives me out of that creepy, seedy place and back home. My finger is hovering over the seatbelt button, ready to jump out as we pull up outside our home. I breathe a sigh of relief as I can see my safety literally a few feet away, and before he can stop me, I'm out and slam the door behind me. As I'm stepping over a tiny little rope fence around our garden, he gets out of his car and my heart sinks. I think I'll pop in and see your mom quickly, he tells me, and I swear I can see a smirk on his face. But I know he is only doing this because he is freaking out, knowing damn well I'm going to tell her. He was trying to delay the inevitable or scare me into keeping my mouth shut. Before I can try and talk him out of it, Mom has heard us pull up and opens the front door. I barge past her with one thought on my mind. I head straight into the kitchen, grab a small knife out of the drawer, and fly into my little sister's room like a mad woman. Don't you fucking dare leave this room, no matter what you hear, I whisper to her, seeing the knife I am stuffing up my sleeve. She just looks at me with panic in her eyes and whispered back, Okay. I walk back into the living room, and the cheeky bastard is sitting on one sofa, sprawled out, comfortable as fuck, like he is at home. I see red. I swear to God I felt like the Hulk. I'm ready for the bastard. I awkwardly perch myself on the arm of the sofa Mom is sitting on, the absolute furthest away from him I can manage, as he just sits there making small talk with Mom about how she is finding the area and if the neighbors are friendly, all the while keeping his beady little weasel eyes on my every move. Why don't you come and sit over here next to me? He pats the sofa cushion next to him. No, I'm all right here, thanks, I tell him as I'm fidgeting with my sleeve, trying to stop the little knife from falling out in front of him. Why are you sitting over there? Come here. Honestly, I won't bite. He laughs and pats the seat next to him again. No, I am quite comfortable here, thank you very much. This time through gritted teeth. My mom, bless her, is looking at each of us during this back and forth like a tennis match, and I can see something is registering in her eyes. She can see my behavior is all off. I've got one bum cheek weirdly perched on the sofa arm, so I'm half stood up, half sat down, and I'm fiddling about with my sleeve. I'm twitchy as hell and staring my mom in the face intensely, mentally trying to speak to her through the power of telepathy alone. I must have looked like a nutter. It's getting late now, so I think you should go, she finally speaks. Mom is starting to look anxious now as she has finally twigged that something has happened. Phil gets up, agrees, and mumbles something about having to check something at his shop. When he walks by me and is nearly out of the room, he pauses and turns to me and puts out his hand to shake mine. I'm thinking to myself, what a fucking weird thing to do. I take the opportunity to kindly offer him my hand. That had the knife, taking it with a bit more force than his polite handshake. He soon yanked his grubby mitt out of mine when the tip of the blade had jabbed him. He looked down and saw the blade. Then he looked at me. I looked at him with such disgust. Phil hightailed it out of our home so fast without another word. A prick for a prick, I told Mom everything. She was fuming. We did discuss going to the police, but there wasn't really a crime committed on his part aside from being a major creep. Sadly, when I mentioned to a couple of girls my age who lived down our street, they clammed up and shot each other a strange look. I guessed he had probably done this type of thing before. We moved away from the area after that, so I'm glad to report I never have to see his smug face ever again. I delivered pizza, and I'd been having a really busy night non-stop back and forth without any time to even pause and take a leak. I've been so busy that I wasn't really thinking about bathroom breaks. But we're also going through a bit of a heat wave in our area. All of a sudden, as I was driving to this particular delivery, the urge to go hit me like a ton of bricks. Things went from 0 to 60 in an instant. Thankfully, I was close to the customer, so I could get this one over with quickly, or so I thought. I pulled up to the house, and it was an area I delivered in before, so I could immediately see that something wasn't right. All the lights were off in the house. Not even the glow of a television or anything. It was extra apparent because the streetlight closest to the door happened to be out of order, and on top of it all, the block was dead quiet. This is a big university area, and obviously, there aren't many student renters in July. But there had to be at least one person because someone ordered this pizza. Maybe they just like sitting in the dark, or they were out back in the yard. Whatever. I just didn't want to get out of my car and knock on a quiet house in the middle of the night, around 9:30 p.m., without first checking that I had the correct address and the customer was inside. It was scorching that night, even after sundown. My car's AC is a joke, and the piping hot pizzas don't help things much. So I have to try and open the car door as infrequently as possible to keep any cool air in. Called the number the customer provided, and the voice on the other end said, kind of brusquely and out of breath, "Yeah?" I just tried to keep it clear and concise. "Hey, it's your pizza out front, but there doesn't appear to be anybody home." And the customer replied, still gasping for air, "Yeah, I'm not home. I had to pee." By that point, I was much less patient than I'd otherwise be with a customer right out of the gate. "Well, then we're going to have to terminate the order because I've arrived in the stated delivery window, and you were supposed to pay in cash, so I don't know what to tell you. Plan ahead next time." I instantly regretted letting my bladder do the talking for me, as the voice on the other end came through more clearly as a young, bubbly, and very, very distraught girl who couldn't have been older than 20 or 25. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was running down the street, so I could barely hear you," she cried. "I just switched you out of my AirPods. Is that better? Sorry, I completely lost track of time at work, but I knew you were coming. That's why I'm literally running home right now. Please don't leave. I'm starving and I don't have a car. Seriously, please don't leave. 5 minutes tops, okay? I know what it's like to be hungry and running late and have no car but not live near any restaurants." Plus, when I heard her voice, I began to remember more specifically having delivered to this place a couple of times before, and she'd always been perfectly nice. Now I felt bad for snapping at her. I tried to walk it back while simultaneously looking out my window for potential spots to pee. No, my bad. I'm letting the heat get to me, and it's not your fault. No need to rush. See you when you get here. I hung up and, while surveilling the street, was starting to think I was really out of luck. All the other houses had people in them and were close together, so there were no clumps of trees or out-of-the-way patches of land or anything. Of course, I had just tossed my empty water bottle at the last delivery because I'm an idiot. Finally, I decided it was escalating to the point of an emergency, and the safest bet was to use a bush in front of the woman's house. She wasn't home. The streetlight was out, so no one would see me. The people who were home were inside. My car was parked across the street, and we're a small shop that doesn't wear uniforms, so if someone did spot me, they'd have no way to connect me to my employer. Animals pee outside all the time. Humans are animals. This is fine, I told myself. I scurried over to the tallest bush in her front yard. She didn't really have much of a yard, more just a walkway lined with bushes and flowers that ran adjacent to her front door. The biggest cluster of bushes, the only one where I could be sure there would be no visible splatter on the side of the house, was about 4 feet from her door. I looked both ways, unzipped, and let fly. After the initial millisecond of relief, so I keep squinting into the darkness to see if maybe I am hitting a key rock or something and could just move a few inches over instead. All of a sudden, I heard a way more concerning noise, a deep voice exclaiming, "What the fuck?" And before I could turn around, assuming I'd been caught by a neighbor, a man came leaping out of the bushes. He blew by me, brushing my golden shower off him as he did. He spat pretty emphatically on the ground, so I think I might have beamed him right in the face. I didn't see where he went after a few paces, but though this next part is kind of a blur, I do think I remember hearing a car screech out from a bit further away after a minute. I'd gotten some night vision by that point, so I was able to make out his height, build, and outfit, but only the most general details of each. I was in such shock that I didn't even put my dick away. I just stood there, trying to figure out what had happened. The reality was so terrifying that my mind refused to accept it and impulsively searched for a reasonable explanation that could make everything okay. I thought, could these bushes lead to some backyard area and just look like they were against the house? Could they have been obscuring an open window? My inner voice was desperately screaming, "Bruh, that man was wearing a hoodie in 90 degrees weather. That was a bad man. You're in a bad situation." But the very idea that I was within inches of a guy who would be hiding in bushes at all, let alone in front of a young woman's house at night, just wasn't something I was ready to grapple with yet. I was coping by not coping. My fight-or-flight response totally failed me at that point, because my dumbass did the absolute last thing I should have done and approached the bushes to try and validate this. There must have been a good reason for a man in a hoodie to be behind these bushes in the middle of the night theory. So I walked over to the side, turned on my phone flashlight, and tried to peer around the line of shrubbery. Pro tip: as scary as things may look in the dark, seeing them with a single beam of your flashlight can sometimes make it even worse. That's when I saw the bag. There was a tattered drawstring bag sitting behind the bushes, slightly splashed with pee. But I was in such a moronic daze from shock that I groped around for it, thinking, see, this is it. This will explain why he was back here. It explained it once I maneuvered it over and pulled it open. I saw a sharp knife, a roll of duct tape, and a bottle of pills. The delusions officially broke at that point, and all the adrenaline, endorphins, and self-preservation instincts that had been suppressed kicked in 10 times over. I became whatever the opposite of dazed is, more laser-focused than I have ever been in my life, with one singular goal: get back to my car. I dropped the bag, booked it across the street, got in my car, and slammed the pedal to the floor before the door was even all the way closed. I went as far as I could, as fast as I could, and I hit a red signal. Then I pulled off to the side and realized I shouldn't be driving any more than necessary in the condition I was in. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour drugstore and took a breath. I was finally calm and coherent enough to zip up and formulate a plan of action. My first lucid thought was, who do I call first? The police or the girl whose house that was? I thought about it for what couldn't have really been more than 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour. And I decided, okay, I'm in my locked car with the engine running. If trouble starts, I can drive away. I know something's up. She might not. She needs to know to keep walking in that direction. But as I was dialing her number, it occurred to me, what if there was no girl? I thought I remembered delivering to that house before, but what if I was wrong? I called 911. The operator was very helpful in keeping me calm because I was a complete wreck by this point. He kept assuring me that someone would be there soon. I kept telling them they had to get there before the girl did, but I was trying to express 3 thoughts at once and was really damaging my own credibility. It came out more as, you've got to save this girl because he wasn't after me. I was just delivering a pizza, unless they were after me, in which case there might not be a girl. But I talked to one on the phone, so then you should find that girl because they used her to lure me there. But if she's real, she doesn't know about the guy who was also real, and there could be more guys. If there's actually a girl, and you know what, Even if there isn't a girl, there might actually be more guys. I only checked one part of the bushes, so I don't actually know. But we'll know which guy is the one I saw because I pissed all over him. I didn't mean to. This was back when I thought the girl was real, but not home. But she might be real, so you really need to find her if she is, because the guy was real. Finally, they basically just asked me to stop talking and stay on the line. But that was when I saw an incoming call from the customer. I couldn't answer it without disrupting my 911 call, so I just ignored it. But then she sent me this text. "Hey, I'm here. Don't see you." I told 911 she was there, and they said officers were only minutes away, but who knows how long that meant, especially after I'd given such a scattered account of the events in my panic. I just felt overwhelmed with guilt because my rational mind said the odds of her being a decoy girl for some large scam targeting pizza guys were low, and the odds of her being the intended victim of a predator were high. So I put my 911 call on mute where I can hear them, but they can't hear me, and turned back, my heart absolutely pounding out of my chest, compulsively muttering fudge the entire way. Then I took 911 off mute and told them I had returned to look for the girl. They weren't happy about that, but I saw her meandering past the parked cars in the street, looking to see if one was mine. And I waved her down, flashing my brights. She bounced on over to the window of my car, happy-go-lucky. I figured that was a good sign that she wasn't in on whatever this was, but I was so scared to be back in the general area and to not know what had just happened or what was going to happen. I didn't want to make the same mistake with her that I had made with 911. So instead of trying to tell the whole story, I stuck to the bare basic facts. There was a man in your bushes. I'm on the phone with the police. I don't know where he is right now. Please get in the car so we can lock the doors. I was barely able to get even those sentences out, and I was shaking like I'd had 10 cups of black coffee. I held up my phone with 911 on the call screen to verify it for her. I thought that was why she got in the car with no further explanation, but it turns out that wasn't entirely it. "You still there? Is she with you? Are you safe? Is anyone else there?" The dispatcher kept checking in, not knowing who the third party I was talking to was. I reassured them, and we drove more cautiously this time to a location 911 instructed us to wait at to speak with police after they cleared the area. I didn't actually have to do much after that. The police came pretty soon after. A police car met us. I gave a statement telling them everything I observed, and she went to go speak to more officers in more detail than they needed me for. It turns out the reason she got right into a strange pizza guy's car without probing any deeper into my story is because she knew who the man was right away from my description. She had an abusive ex-boyfriend who was apparently psychotic enough that he immediately came to mind from hearing "there's a guy in your bushes." She later called us to thank me and insist on leaving a huge tip. I wasn't there when the call came in, so the kid who answered didn't know to refuse to accept the money, but the manager already promised the next time we see her, we can load her up with enough one free pie cards to last a lifetime. Easily the scariest thing that has ever happened to me on the job or off. I don't get the chance to tell the story much because I try to avoid sharing it with anyone who could possibly know the girl or know of the event. But I'm still not the same since, even though I know he didn't even have anything to do with me directly. This truly shook me to my core. It was the summer before my senior year in college. My little brother, always interested in military stuff, had gotten a pair of night vision goggles for his birthday, and he left them at my apartment one night. I was bored and decided to go try out the goggles at a wooded hiking area preserved nearby. In retrospect, this seems like a very stupid idea since I was all by myself and female. But I was young and stupid, and I got myself all excited at the possibility of seeing deer and other woodland creatures in their natural nighttime habitat. I was familiar with these woods. My best friend and I had hiked there at night before, and we'd never run into anyone else. Our area is mostly rural and pretty safe, so I didn't anticipate any trouble. I parked in the little sparsely lit parking area, ignored the sign, "Park closes at 10, and entered the woods, night vision goggles in hand. It was a half moon that night, and that was the only light that filtered down through the canopy of trees. It was pretty dark, and I didn't want to put on the goggles until I'd found a place to sit down. I lit my way with the mini mag light on my keychain. A couple of times I thought I heard a little rustling in the woods a fair distance away, but it was nothing out of the ordinary, and I put it down to animal activity. Hopefully the deer I'd come hoping to see. After I'd hiked in a fair distance, I found a fallen log to sit on and put on the goggles. I don't know if you've ever used night vision goggles before, but the effect is impressive. They can turn near pitch darkness into bright as day. Everything appears in shades of green, but quite bright and clear. For a while, I had a blast looking around from my fallen log vantage point. Some chipmunks played around in the leaves nearby, and a big owl blinked its lamp-like eyes at me from a tree branch. No deer, though, and I started to think that maybe they wouldn't be likely to come anywhere near me, darkness or no, if I sat right out in the open on a log. So I decided to find a place where I could be a little more hidden. I made my way a little deeper into the woods and finally found a huge tree perfect for climbing. I've always loved climbing trees, so it was nothing for me to hoist myself up a few branches and settle in to wait for my deer. I didn't get to see any. What I did see, lit up in bright night vision green after about 10 minutes of waiting, was this: a man dressed head to toe in dark-colored clothing, making his way stealthily through the woods. He was coming from the same direction I'd come and was clearly trying to stay hidden, moving from tree to tree and glancing around carefully before moving on again. It looked very much like he was looking for someone. It took me a few moments to notice that he was carrying something, and when I saw what it was, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. He had a knife, a big one, and he was gripping it as if he expected to use it in the very near future. It wasn't deer hunting season, and this was a nature preserve where hunting of any kind was prohibited, and at any rate, the guy was alone and not dressed like a hunter. There were no deer in sight, and very few hunters killed their prey with knives. I was suddenly horribly aware of my situation. A young woman alone, weaponless, in the middle of the woods at night. This was the 90s, so no cell phones, and even if I'd had one, I wouldn't have felt safe using it lest I draw his attention. I didn't know how he was able to see so well in the dark. I guess his eyes had just adjusted, and I was terrified he would look up and see me. I sat there, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, and watched him as he continued his methodical and stealthy process of scanning the forest for who or whatever the hell he was stalking. I scanned around but couldn't see anyone else, even from my high vantage point, and the sickening thought struck me that he might be looking for me. I remembered the rustling noises I'd heard in the woods when I first arrived, and then I thought back further and remembered something else. A white car that had followed too close behind me for most of my drive to the nature preserve. I'd been annoyed and a little freaked out at the time, but when I turned into the nature preserve parking area, the white car had passed me and driven on its way, and I hadn't thought anything more of it. Now, I wondered, horrified, if this was the driver of that car, if he'd circled back and seen my parked car alone in the lot, if he'd come in after me. I sat, paralyzed with fear, and watched the man for what felt like forever, but was probably another half hour or so. There was a heart-stopping moment when he paused right underneath my tree, and I was sure he was going to look up and find me. But he didn't. After a while, he seemed to give up on whatever plan he had in mind. I heard him say, "Fuck it," and he started heading back in the direction he'd come, the direction of the parking area. I stayed in the tree, wet with sweat and crying, until the sun came up a few hours later. Then I climbed down and, still terrified, gripping the little can of pepper spray on my keychain, I made my way as fast as I could to the parking lot. The man had been there. My windshield had been smashed with a rock, and someone had scraped all down the sides of the car with something sharp, presumably a giant knife that I'm lucky didn't end up in my chest. Thank God for the night vision goggles that let me see him before he could see me. And thank God for big trees with sturdy branches. This is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. And what makes it worse is that, had things gone down differently, I might not have been here to tell the story. I live in Finland in a fairly small city. This happened to me a year ago when I was 14, so it was a Friday evening, and on every Friday, our mom let us go to the store and buy candy. So my 12-year-old sister and I left our house to go to the store, and it was already dark outside. We made our way to the closest store, which was over a mile away. While walking, at some point, there's a man behind us walking the same way, but I didn't think much about it at the time. He could be just going to the same store, so I continued chatting with my sister while the man is behind us, following at a safe distance. We got to the store with no complications, and the man followed us into the store. We take our time selecting our candy and get to the register to pay. While I was packing the candy into my backpack, I saw this man buying only a chocolate bar. Pretty far away to go for a chocolate bar, I thought. And at this point, my suspicions start to rise for this guy. I get out of the store with my sister, and we start making our way back. We walked for a while, and I quickly glanced back, and the man was still there, following us. I took a look at my sister, who seemed totally unaware of the man's presence. We continued our walk, and up ahead of us was an unlit dirt road that continued for a good part of the trip. So, I looked back again, and there the man still was, about 60 feet away. At this point, I was almost certain that he was following us because, on our way to the store, he did not walk this part of the way behind us. The dirt road goes through a forest, and it had a curve at the start of it. I could see the man's shadow coming down the road, and he started looking for us from the road. He walked back and forth on the road. Now, I was certain he was following us all that time. My heart was racing, and I tried to be as quiet as possible. The man didn't find us, but continued running forwards. We stayed in the forest for a while before getting the courage to come out. We walk the rest of the way home with no problems and get to our house. We eat our candy and have a good evening, but that really did bother me for a while, and especially my sister. Thinking about this still gives me the chills, and the thought of getting caught in that situation creeps me out, and I try not to think about it. I wouldn't want to meet this guy again. This may be a ramble of thoughts, but after recently stumbling on this sub, I finally felt a place I could offer something that my family and I experienced a few years ago, that, to this day, gives me a shiver. I have been camping solo, backpacking, and hunting my whole life in Oregon, and felt comfortable in the woods and have a deep respect for nature. A few years ago, my wife, daughter, and 2 German shepherds went camping north of Mount Jefferson, Oregon. I have included the coordinates of our campsite, which we found to be the perfect setup for us and our 2 dogs, who need the privacy since they are intimidating to other dog owners and can be loud when spooked. It was not an established campsite, just a nice horseshoe off a USFS road that had flat ground, full trees, and a fire pit. The first night, my daughter wanted to sleep by herself in a 2-man tent right next to ours. It was maybe 2 feet away from me and my wife's tent. We made the male German shepherd, Guts, his name, sleep with her in the tent. That whole first night, neither my wife nor I could sleep. We both heard footsteps, and they were heavy, not like typical forest critters scampering around the night. I was well armed because I was paranoid from reading recently before departing about a dad in California who was shot and killed in a tent next to his 2 infant daughters. Needless to say, both my wife and I had 2 pistols and my rifle with me. The dogs are great at detection, and that is why I felt my daughter could sleep alone, because Guts is completely fearless, and nothing would lay a hand on her without a battle to the death. All in all, nothing but bad vibes and loud footsteps occurred that night, which I ultimately decided was deer or maybe some elk. Day 2 morning, we go for a walk down the road, and maybe 300 feet away, I see the circular area in the photo. I see an abandoned road where a rusted gate post, the gate was missing, was covered in vegetation. Something of blue color caught my eye, and Guts immediately took off running down this abandoned road. My heart began to race because I thought it was another family camping like us. And he was going to get himself shot or scare some innocent people to death. So I chased after him as fast as I could, and the rest followed. He stops after 20 feet into the road, and me yelling his name, but I have covered just enough distance to see that there's nobody there and something is off about the sight. I yell, "Hello? Is anyone there? Sorry about the dog," and got no response. My curiosity gets the best of me, and I have to see what the sight conditions were. As I get closer, I know something is wrong. It had all the necessities for a campsite, including a cooler, propane burner, tent, blankets, and folding table. But every single item had been completely destroyed, smashed, and torn from what appeared to be claw marks. We all walked around in circles, puzzled why anyone would leave all their camping gear behind, including an expensive REI tent. I figured, well, someone left in a hurry, and animals got to the rest, as the only logical explanation. Still, a propane tank and cooler were flattened by something, and it certainly wasn't snow-packed with tree coverage in that spot. As the afternoon rolls in, my daughter and I are playing boat-a-ball at the campsite, and my wife goes walking maybe 70 feet north to do her business. I do not have a direct line of sight on her, but all of a sudden, I see Guts make a mad dash straight towards her. Normally, he would always be with me unless he was called over, and she didn't call for him. His speed and focus caught my attention, and I knew something weird was happening, so I ran over there, and my wife starts jogging at me, and I immediately draw my pistol. Guts has completely continued running into the forest another 100 feet before I call him, and he stopped. My other dog, Leia, who never misses the opportunity to be the pack leader, is not taking point. I have had her for now 7 years, and this was the first time in her life she refused to leave my daughter's side. She was full of hair raised and attached to us at the hip. Again, anytime we hike or play, Leia is up front, bossing everything in her path, and pauses to look to see where we are, and continues. I asked my wife what happened, and she said, "I was trying to pee, and all of a sudden I felt all my hairs raise. I knew someone was watching me, and then I saw Guts running towards me, and I just got up to move towards you." We spent 10 minutes looking for signs of anything and saw no trails, broken branches, or anything to point to what and where something went. We decide we are spending one more night since it's too late to pack up and drive, but we will all be in the big tent together. Before we go to bed, I put a rope with a makeshift coin alarm around the perimeter of our campsite. I used a mint can and some coins and keys from our truck and zip-tied it so anything hitting the rope gave a little jingle. Very unsophisticated, but it put my wife at ease. As I go to tie my last corner off at a tree near our tent, our third mystery item unveils itself. It looks like someone has done the same exact thing I have done with a rope that was so old and brown I didn't see it at first. It was broken, and only a few pieces remained. But sure enough, it was tied at roughly the same height, approximately 8 to 10 inches off the ground, and even had a few rusted washers on it. I immediately felt someone had stayed here before and put the same makeshift warning system on the same tree, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, based on the condition of the rope. Perhaps my paranoia has now reached a new height, but I had to make sure the girls felt we were safe, and at the time the only thing I could think of was, when the evening came around, I made them sit in the truck, and I fired a clip of my .45 into the dirt as a signal to whatever was out there that we were armed. I reassured the girls that anybody listening to that now knows we have 2 wolves and are armed, and we are too risky of a target, so we can sleep safely that night. We heard no footsteps, and the dogs never perked up and barked. We left early the next morning. Fast forward to today, and I watched the Amazon Missing 411 Hunted documentary, and I noticed the cluster smack dab close to where we camped that weekend, and a flood of dread rushes over me as I think of that mysterious abandoned campsite with the ripped tent and smashed cooler and cooktop. We have been camping since and have enjoyed the beauty of the NW. But there was something there at that place that possibly took or harmed someone else less than 300 feet away from where we camped. And we all thank our lucky stars Guts was doing his thing so well that afternoon.